Hey folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports. This is Chris on the campus of Soltech, the school here that Solidarity has set up in Gauteng. It's a pleasure to have you back once again. And my guest is none other than from AfriForum, Ernst Roets. Ernst, hoe gaan dit?
Dit gaan baie goed, baie dankie.
All right, excellent. So let's get into it. Some events happened the past few weeks, which we're all aware of. The latest iteration of the Julius Malema's rantings. He had his 10th anniversary gala for the economic freedom fighters, in which he sang his so-called struggle song once again. And that set off a lot of people. In fact, even Elon Musk tweeted about this, and briefly it made the international headlines in a lot of U.S. newspapers. Any thoughts on the singing and what happened with 92,000 people at FNB Stadium?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot that could be said about it. The one thing is that just from a legal perspective, we believe that it was unlawful because there's a court case pending. We're going to be in court in September. But other than the legal battle, it's good to see so many people speaking out about this. People like Elon Musk. I mean, you've been speaking out about this for years now. People like Jordan Peterson and many others have sort of...
Stu Peters also?
Yeah. So a lot of people have sort of suddenly come to the table and we're very grateful for that. It's very important also that people recognize this isn't a song, it's a chant, and it's often referred to as a struggle song, but it's actually a struggle chant. You might say, and the word struggle is even questionable here. Yes, the argument is it was used sort of during the apartheid years, but it's very clear that that's not the intention of Julius Malema. And I think another comment is, it's questionable how much it played in Malema's favor to do this chant.
There may have been a backlash against it.
Yeah, but probably not among his own supporters.
Sure, of course not.
Yeah, but I think that, I don't want to say the good thing about the song, but the one positive consequence of this and the fact that it was so televised is that a lot of people all over the world is taking note. People who should have taken note a long time ago, but fortunately they are taking note now. And so, in a sense, it strengthened our cause, you might even say.
Well, it's interesting because if we go back to 2007, Boek van Blerk released a song called De la Rey, about Koos de la Rey, the general from the Anglo-Boer War and then First World War, but unfortunately was shot just before that thing kicked off. That song was really a call to unite, not to attack others, and it was highlighting the transgressions of the British Empire at the time. Yet politicians and legacy media had a very different response to that than how they make apologies and explain away Kill the Boer.
Yeah, it's flabbergasting how people respond to this song, especially the mainstream media, and the New York Times is, the highest profile example. I mean, we know the New York Times have had a bunch of articles in the past about all these different hate signals. Apparently there's some sign you make with your hands and it's an expression
the OK
of
sign.
Oh, that one, there you go. I didn't even know which one.
Apparently this is racist.
Yeah, so if you do that, it's hate speech.
Even though OK is of African origin. I don't know if you know that. The word in English comes from West Africa. Okay. Slaves in America used the phrase. It came from West Africa and it entered the English language from there.
Oh, wow. Well, you see, so that's hate speech. This, don't try that in a small town, is hate speech.
Jason Aldean.
Yeah, all of this is hate speech. And then when a guy actually comes out and says, we need to start killing people based on their ethnicity, then it's not hate speech. And we know why. It's because of the race of the person chanting the song. And it's because of the race of the people who are being targeted with the song. That's the only reason why this is argued not to be hate speech.
Well, let me be serious about this for a moment. It's a very serious topic. I was making light a moment ago. The reality is that this happens all over South Africa, and it's always been happening, but with the disbandment of the commandos about 15 years ago, it seemed to be picking up quite a bit since then over the years, because now you don't have a reserve force that can respond and serve as a deterrence to this sort of behavior. But South Africans are being killed almost every day in rural areas. And what's, I think, disheartening from the legacy media and from political commentators is that the media try to turn this into a conversation about white genocide or whites are just complaining. But they're murdering black, colored, and Indian people on farms as well. And I think that's something that probably people should know about, that all South Africans are at risk here on farms because of their vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, it's so the counter argument. A lot of people, especially on the left, are trying to discredit this whole campaign against hate speech and against farm murders by saying this is not a genocide. If you want to see genocide, go look at Rwanda and Nazi Germany and so forth. And sure, but the point is that we're not arguing that what's happening here is a genocide. We're arguing that what's happening here is a very serious problem. And now the counter argument is we don't need to care about it because it's not a genocide. Yes, it's true that South Africa is a very violent country. And with a very high murder rate. The murder rate in South Africa is about 34 per 100,000. The global average is around 5 per 100,000. So it's a very dangerous country. But what we also find is on farms in particular, it seems now to calculate the rate per 100,000 is controversial because of a whole bunch of variables.
Which ones count? Which ones
don't
count?
all of
What's
that.
the total?
Yeah. But the fact remains that it's very fair and conservative to conclude that your chances of being murdered is very much higher if you live on a farm in South Africa, even despite the fact that South Africa in general is a very dangerous country.
Well, all of that plays, of course, into the fact that people on farms live in remote locations. Response times, even for professional, well-equipped, well-trained police forces, are going to be long. I mean, if you're 20 kilometers out in the bush from the closest town and another 10 kilometers from a police station, that's a problem. Whereas in the city, there might be, if they're professional, they're trained, they're willing to respond, they're relatively close nearby, and you'll get a response pretty quickly. So isolation certainly plays a role in that, and it's also lots of opportunity for those committing these crimes to escape.
Yeah, it is. Isolation is a big thing. The fact that we have what adds fuel to the fire is the electricity crisis. The fact that signal is a problem, dirt roads is a problem. And so it's sometimes said that because of these factors, that's why these attacks are happening, and it's certainly contributing, but that still doesn't explain the hate speech. It doesn't explain the gratuitous violence. It doesn't explain people writing political slogans on the farmhouses and so forth. So there certainly is a very dark side to these crimes that a lot of people would not like us to talk about.
But AfriForum is not just about pointing out the problem and filing lawsuits. AfriForum also is an organization committed to solutions. You have community patrols to protect people at night in all sorts of neighborhoods, not just white folks, but other folks too. You also have put an effort into showing how to overcome the lack of service delivery with this, if I get the pronunciation wrong, spare me, but self-bestuur.
Self-bestuur.
And self-bestuur. Self-bestuur.
That's the
So
German
I did the German, yeah, sorry, self-bestuur. Self-bestuur, and that's a documentary by Ernst van Zyl. He did that, fantastic. Talking about like South Tyrol, how they're able to, as in a semi-autonomous region of Italy, manage the affairs. So tell me a little bit about AfriForum. It's about solutions, not just complaining, right?
Yeah, so when we talk about farm attacks, we always say that we have a double strategy, and the solution is twofold. On the one side, we are tax-paying citizens, and if you pay tax, you can and you should expect of the police to do their job, and you should expect of the government to keep their people safe. And if they're not doing that, you shouldn't just accept it. So the one side of the strategy is this campaign. You might even describe it as the political campaign. And what I mean by that is it includes protest actions, it includes petitions, conferences, a campaign to get bigger recognition of the problem, to have it recognized by the government, to have it declared and treated as a priority crime. But we also know that the other side of this double strategy in practice is even more important, and that's the do-it-yourself side. That's the
self-bestuur.
Self-bestuur, yes. That's the take ownership side of it, and to say that even though we are tax-paying citizens, and even though we demand of the police to do more, we cannot just wait for them to do more while they're not doing what they should be doing, and while the government isn't doing what they should be doing. So we should do it ourselves, and so establishing community safety structures all over South Africa is a big priority. AfriForum has established upwards of 150 such structures. There's more than 10,000 volunteers already involved, people driving patrols in their areas, having radio contact.
On their own time, at their own expense.
Yes. Working people, lawyers and teachers and doctors.
Farmers.
Yeah. And then going at night, driving patrols, speaking, having radio contact. And there are many examples of these patrols catching criminals, catching farm attackers, preventing farm attacks from happening, and so forth. And we have seen, research has shown this, that when people start doing this, and it's obvious, but when people start doing this, there's a decrease in crime.
Well, Ernst, what's next for AfriForum? You seem to be at the forefront of these issues before a lot of other people realize that they're important. Is there something coming on the horizon that maybe we're not looking at that we should pay attention to?
Well, AfriForum had a meeting this morning where
apropos question,
where I was as well, and what was discussed there is that it's difficult for an organization like AfriForum to say that there's only one thing that we're going to do now, but if we had to say that, the one thing for AfriForum is to strengthen community structures, to strengthen our ability to react on ground level in terms of safety, as I've just described, but not only in terms of safety, also in terms of small business owners, communities getting together, helping each other out, becoming involved with the local school, with the local church, helping out, working together with the Solidarity Helping Hand and so forth. So strengthening our community structures is, if I had to mention only one thing as the next thing, that would be it.
Last question here. In July 2021, when Jacob Zuma was ordered to go to prison for his contempt of court by the Constitutional Court, on the 29th of June, I predicted that there would be riots, looting, and so on in KZN. I had no idea the magnitude it was going to be, but I predicted. Somehow the South African police and the intelligence services and the government security structures didn't notice that, or maybe, I'm not going to say it was intentional, but they certainly weren't prepared for it. We had police that ran out of bullets within hours, didn't have rubber bullets. Police weren't pre-positioned, there were no water cannons, and the attacks started right after Zuma finally reported to prison 4 days late, well actually 8 days late, 5 days late. On the 9th of July, the Mui River, the toll plaza was attacked there. This chaos had happened in KwaZulu-Natal and also to a degree in Gauteng, particularly in Soweto. Has this had an impact on raising South Africans' awareness and why it's so important to have community safety structures and the things that AfriForum does?
Yeah, it had a big impact in a few ways. One is there are many case studies from what happened there with some communities who were completely unprepared for something like this, because
some that were prepared.
Exactly, and some were very well prepared, and there were those video clips, especially on social media, with communities driving patrols once again,
and
with
running roadblocks.
Yeah, and just taking charge and saying, this is our property, this is our community, we're in charge here, and we're not going to allow you guys to come in. And there are many such examples where they were able to continue, have a safe life and prosper and so forth. And then there were others who were just completely ill-prepared or unprepared and who suffered as a result of that. So that's the one thing. And the other thing that's important is that those riots were, in a sense, a wake-up call to what can happen in South Africa. And
very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. And I don't even think it's fair to say that something like that might happen in the future. We can safely say that will happen again in the future. We just don't know when. The South African political environment and the environment in terms of crime and so forth and political instability is of such that this will happen again, and we need to be prepared for that when that happens again.
And I did say last question, but I think there's a point here worth bringing out for the public's information, but also it'll help AfriForum out. A lot of people in South Africa have the false impression that AfriForum is a political party. It's not. You're not even a political structure. You're a civil rights organization, yes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're not anti-politics, but we do believe that our philosophy, you might say, is that the most important part of the solution is outside the realm of political parties. And as Flip Buys, our chairperson, always says, we don't work for the next election, we work for the next generation. So our focus is very much Tocquevillian, you might say, with a very strong sense of focus on community involvement, on community institutions, and so forth. And yes, politics is important and political parties are important. Our view is that political parties constitute one of the many institutions that a healthy community should have.
Well, Ernst, baie dankie. Thank you so much for your time, Kia Leboa. And with that reference to Alexis de Tocqueville, the author of Democracy in America, we're going to wrap it up here, folks. Thanks for tuning in to Chris White Reports. We'll catch you here next time on the program.